Hello, and welcome to Sound Off with System One. I'm your host, Krista Kornchuk, and I'm here today with our recruiting experts to speak with you about optimizing your resume for recruiting software. Before we get started, here are a few words about System One. System One is a leading provider of specialized, highly technical outsourced services and workforce solutions to critical infrastructure, technology, life sciences, and government sectors, putting more than 650 employees and 9,000 contractors to work in the United States, Canada, and the UK. As you're tuning in today, please join us in the comments. Our marketing team will be monitoring them. Let us know where you're joining from and what industry you work in. And if you have any questions relevant to today's topics, please drop them in there as well, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. And before we get started with our topic, I'm going to have our panel introduce themselves. You can visit all jobs at jobs.system1.com or by scanning the QR code, and I'm going to let our panel talk about their hot jobs. Dana, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Dana O'Hara. I'm an account manager here at Alta IT, and our hot job that we want to highlight is a Citrix engineer. It does require a top secret clearance, and it is located in Quantico, Virginia.
Hi, I'm Jane Homan. I work as a recruiter with System One. My hot job is an assistant sample coordinator with a large retail client here in Pittsburgh. It is part-time hours. The hours are worth it, and we can't wait for you to join the team.
And I'm Danielle. I am the financial recruitment lead here in Houston through System One. I am highlighting a bilingual HR admin role. This role sits on site in Deer Park, and they are looking for someone with 2 to 3 years of recruiting experience.
Awesome. And again, if you want to view those jobs, make sure you scan our QR code and connect with our recruiters. Without further ado, we're going to get started with our topic. Again, we're discussing optimizing your resume for recruiting software. And if you stick around for the whole broadcast, you're going to receive our free exclusive resume optimization guide. So you can really learn how to make your resume for applicant tracking systems. So make sure you stay tuned, ask us questions, and you'll be getting that guide at the end of the broadcast. Our first question is, what are some common mistakes candidates make on their resumes that prevent them from passing through recruiting software? Jane, we'll start with you.
Awesome. The first thing, and any of my candidates will tell you, I cannot stress enough that your education is up to date. If we are looking for a high school diploma, bachelor's, master's, any education at the minimum, if your resume does not show it, you will not pass through. If you have it, great. The system will not know that. So please have that up to date, especially on Indeed.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Another key thing to be mindful of is keywords. One of the ways that we use ATS systems is by typing in keywords that are relevant to the job that we're working on, and that's really going to pull your resume to the forefront of the list that we're sourcing through.
Yeah, absolutely. And along with finding your resume, you want to make sure your contact information is at the top of the resume. It is up to date so we can reach you. And then I would definitely include everything spelled out, no abbreviations. That way we're able to use those keywords to find you as well.
Yeah, those little details are really going to make a big difference. And when you think about it, looking back on past resumes, I can see why a bunch of them didn't go through. So thank you guys for sharing that advice. What key elements should every resume include to increase its chances of being selected by applicant tracking systems? Danielle, we'll start with you.
Yeah, one of the things that I think can be overlooked is being specific about your location. You don't have to list out your full address, but indicating your zip code, especially for our team in Houston, we work with a lot of on-site positions. And when I'm doing an Indeed search, for example, it's leveraging a radius from that zip code. And so if you're not listing that on your resume and maybe just have Houston, Texas, there's a chance that I'm not going to get to your resume because it's not pulling with the indicators that I've used.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, it's very important to make sure you include your skill sets on your resume. So the more times you're including that, the more chances we have of pulling your resume during that search.
Absolutely. And one other thing with that, on top of your skill sets, to have the software that you know, even if it's basic to you, it's secondhand, you know, like the back of your hand, second nature. Make sure it's on there because we will search for that if it's especially a minimum.
Fantastic. And circling back to keywords, how important are keywords and how can job seekers identify the best ones to include? Jane, we'll start with you.
Awesome. So if you know what job that you are applying for, that is great. Copy their job description. See what we're looking for. Follow the qualifications. Follow the responsibilities. If you've done that before, make sure you highlight that. Also have a basic resume that you can edit from there for each job. It is worth the extra time.
Absolutely. Quality over quantity when it comes to pushing out those resumes. And what specific advice would you give candidates looking to stand out among hundreds of resumes? Dina, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so kind of just to go with the second question, I would say to always include your skill set. Even if it is an older skill set, something you've only used a couple times, I would always put it in there. There's a chance that maybe we're looking for a job that has that specific skill set and you're a match in that way.
For sure. And one other thing I like to add, and I talk a lot about Indeed, LinkedIn is grouped in here too. Your resume that we see or your profile that we see is going to be a basic format. I work with a lot of graphic designers. When I see what you've done, that's great. And I connect with you, I get your Indeed resume. When we connect, if you can have your designed resume ready and you can send that over because that's specific to your industry, which will be specific to our job.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. Having multiple resumes for the different instance, whether it's in person or online, is super key. And how can job seekers balance optimizing for software while also appealing to the recruiter, reading the resume later? Danielle, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Good question. So one of the things to keep in mind is that while we don't need an overload of information on your resume, it is helpful to be detailed. Sometimes we come across resumes that just don't communicate enough information to know if you're a fit for the role. Because while the ATS system is important, there are people behind that ATS system. And so one of the things that I encourage candidates to do when creating a resume is leverage the job description that was given to you or that you accessed when you applied to your current role and mimic those responsibilities on your resume. Typically, job descriptions are condensed in a way that relay the role well. And I think if you can kind of mirror what was communicated at the beginning of your position on your resume, it's going to do a good job of communicating what you're capable of and paint a clear picture for us as a recruiter, hiring manager to understand your skill set.
Jane, I see you're back. Do you have anything to add on that?
I think Danielle hit it on the head. I do know a little bit of your answer, Danielle, since we talked the other day. But just going back to what you've done, make sure you highlight it. We see generic resumes, but if we want to know what's specific to each and every candidate, it'll pull it through the system and it'll pull through from our eyes.
Yeah, I would also say, just to piggyback off both those ideas, make sure that for the applicant tracking system and the recruiter that your resume is easy to read. Same font, everything is on there in detail, kind of like Danielle mentioned, but that just makes it easier for both of us on that end.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was a recruiter, which was some time ago, you have so many resumes to read. So at first glance, you're, kind of skimming a little bit. So making sure that it's, easy and digestible is super important. And what strategies do you recommend for individuals transitioning between industries or roles to ensure their resume aligns with recruiting software? Jane, we'll start with you.
Awesome. I love this question because it goes back to that personalization. Throw a cover letter out there, give a quick description. It's okay if they're completely different industries. We don't need the full story. You can just add a little bit of notes there and we'll understand why you're making that transition. Or if you don't want to do a cover letter, you can do a couple sentences as your summary on the top of your resume. I think those are really crucial, and I've had great luck getting candidates hired with that. So they've come from a different industry. They had a little bit of a summary. I said, you know what? I can see their thought process, and at the end of the day, they get hired.
Yeah, I agree. The summary is very important. Even just including a special little note there on, why you might want to be transitioning to a different industry, if you have any experience, any education, any classes or trainings with that. And then making sure your dates are accurate just to kind of show your timeline with your history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, typically if you're transition or looking to transition into something new, you've somewhere along your path in your career, you've touched it in some way. It became of interest for a reason, and so really highlighting those opportunities that you've been exposed to that new path that you're trying to take. I met with a candidate last week who is doing just that. He was on the sales side of what he wants to be doing, and is now trying to transition into an operational seat. And just by adjusting the wording in your resume to reflect that you're familiar with those skills is going to go a long way.
Absolutely. And we have a viewer question. What resume formats work best for ATS systems, and are there any formats candidates should avoid?
I think that there's definitely ones that are easier to read, specifically PDF for us. I find those are the easiest to get through the ATS systems and to even on our side source through.
And I kind of want to add to that too. Oh, I'm sorry, Jane, did you want to speak?
Oh, well, the only thing I was going to add was sometimes whenever we do the submittal process, I'll ask permission of the candidates that I can change their Word document to a PDF, because the managers or, the hiring managers, they want to see that. Or a plant manager, they want a quick thing that they can see. Sometimes a Word document doesn't translate very well.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to know. And what about when people add design elements like graphics or columns or custom fonts? Does that interfere with the ATS readability?
I don't think it necessarily interferes, but I would say depending on what you're applying for makes a difference as well. Graphic design, they like to see that portfolio attached to it and some of your skill sets in your resume. A basic or just kind of like a similar IT job, you might not need all that, but just position specific.
Perfect. And last format question, when it comes to standard section headings like experience and education, is that readable for ATS compatibility?
Yeah. Yes. I think that. Sorry, I was trying to think about it on the viewer side. Yeah, one of the ways that we can search in an ATS system is by job title. So anything that indicates a specific title, or again, education, we can search by education. So those headings do matter.
Fantastic. Thank you, Allie, who wrote those questions in. We're going to move on to our standard questions. What are some resources or tools candidates can use to test their resume and make sure it's ATS friendly? Dana, we'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say reaching out to a recruiter is one of the best tools you can do. We're always happy to kind of go through your resume with you and just make sure that everything looks good on there and is easy to read for the ATS and us as well. So even if it's not a specific job you're applying to, feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to help.
Yeah, and then another tool that's helpful, as we know, AI is becoming something that is a resource that we need to get on board with. So one of the things that we recommend to our candidates is just analyze your resume through an AI system, specifically ChatGPT comes to mind. You can copy and paste your resume in there and even ask it to reword it, or to just take a look at it, and it's going to highlight or even adjust some of the wording. And so while it's not foolproof, it gives you another alternative way of looking at your resume, and then you can compare the two and see where you might want to edit your actual resume.
Perfect. And it looks like we have another question coming in from our audience. Jose is asking, should I mention a certification if I'm in the process of attaining it, or should I wait until I have received it? That's a really good question, Jose.
Yeah, that is a great question. I would always list it on your resume and just put in the process or obtaining. We have a lot of clients that require like a Security Plus or a Level 3. However, if you're in the process of taking it, they will make an exception and give you 60 to 90 days. So I do think it's always important to include that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yes, and I think when that comes with the ATS soft or our systems, if you have it on there, that's a keyword that'll highlight. So we might get that out of conversation, but if the system doesn't show it because we're searching for it, that would, hinder us seeing it essentially.
Fantastic. Thanks for the question, Jose. And our last question of the day, when reviewing resumes that pass the ATS stage, what additional qualities or details do you look for? Jane, we'll start with you.
Awesome. So going back to any position that requires a portfolio, I look for that. I get if you don't want to share it right off the bat on Indeed, on LinkedIn, that's fine. Have it listed that portfolio is available upon request. Sometimes whenever we're searching through the ATS system, we will type in portfolio to ensure that we are looking at a candidate that has even a small, large, doesn't matter, but we need to know that you have one. So make sure, going back to industry specific, if your industry should have that and you have it, throw it on there.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Another thing that we encourage is making sure that your LinkedIn reflects what you're communicating on your resume. Oftentimes, once we've gotten to the point of considering a candidate, we're going to go check their LinkedIn out to get to know their background a little more. And so ensuring that what's being communicated there matches what your resume reflects.
Fantastic. We are out of time for today, but thank you so much to our panel, and thank you to everyone that commented. Again, if you stayed and listened to our entire broadcast, you're going to receive our free exclusive resume optimization guide. So you're really going to know how to pass through the applicant tracking systems. Don't forget to follow System One on LinkedIn if you're not already, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more job seeker topics. Our next Sound Off with System One live stream will be next year, Friday, January 3rd at 2 p.m. And we'll be discussing top skills companies are looking for in 2025. We'll see you then.